Winston Peters has ruled out working with Chris Hipkins permanently. What about you? Would you rule out working with Hipkins?
Well, the difference is I don't need to say it. Look, I mean, this is a guy who was the police minister when the crime got out of control. He was in charge of the COVID response, which speaks for itself. He was the Minister of Education when kids stopped going to school en masse. And he was the Minister of Health when the health budget went up 60% and the outcomes got worse. So, you know, this guy's got the opposite of the Midas touch. I think they call him a poo Midas, and he's certainly done some damage.
So you wouldn't work with him?
Well, no, because that would require him to be working. And as far as I can see, he doesn't work.
Is there anyone else that you wouldn't work with, that you'd rule out working with?
I am constantly astonished that our country has a political party that is named for a race of people that casts everything in racial terms and is somehow given a free pass. Funnily enough, the fact that Te Pāti Māori are held to a lower standard, not just by other politicians, not just by the media, but actually by themselves, I think is really shameful. And we need to start working towards a vision of New Zealand as a nation of human beings with hopes and dreams, rather than different collectives sharing common ancestry and forever divided, which seems to be their vision of, you know, tangata whenua, tangata tiriti, different partners and on each side of a compact. I mean, it's never worked anywhere in the world, but it's been disastrous where it's gone wrong.
Well, speaking of the Treaty Principles Bill, I mean, I'm sure you're sick of talking about it.
No, not at all.
Are you surprised by how much backlash there was towards the bill over the last year?
Not at all. We took on a direction in this country which is toxic and corrosive, but also quite profitable for a lot of people. If you think about John Tamahere, who is behind Toitu Te Tiriti, which is really just the Māori party, who makes a huge amount of money through the Waipareira Trust. They're a major provider. My experience of working with him is that he believes that they should not be accountable for what they deliver on behalf of the taxpayer, because the treaty elevates them above accountability to the Crown. They're rather a partner to the Crown. I had this whole experience with John Tamahere signing up to run a partnership school or charter school, kura horua, call it what you will, and then trying to renegotiate the contract at the last minute for no accountability. Now, if you're a person who believes that you basically are a parallel state, that you are not accountable to the same government and Crown and taxpayer as everyone else, then of course when someone comes along with a treaty principles bill that says, hey, guess what folks, we're all equal, you don't like that very much. And I look at some of those people who came and gave submissions. Now, how many of them are lawyers or advocates advocating in a world where, as a treaty partner, some people have different rights from others? Then I come along and say, everyone, guess what folks, everyone has equal rights. That will get you a backlash. But at the end of the day, because a lot of the opponents were covering for, I guess, vested interests that they masqueraded as moral principle, they weren't able to put forward convincing arguments. And you watch that debate on the second reading, yeah, we lost the vote, but we won the argument because nobody who was against the bill said the bill says X. I don't believe X because Y. I instead believe that New Zealand should be run according to Z. You didn't hear that X, Y, Z. You just heard lots of hate and rhetoric. On the other hand, the idea that Parliament has the right to make laws, that Parliament and the government have the obligation to uphold all people's rights and duties, and that all people's rights and duties are equal, those three principles no one laid a glove on them. It's possible to address inequities amongst people without categorising us into racial groups. I'll just give you one little example. We have recently changed bowel cancer screening from 60 years old for European people and 50 years old for Māori and Pacific people to just 58 for all people. And why? Because the data is really clear. People have the same chance of contracting bowel cancer for any given age, regardless of their ancestry. So not only are we better targeting need, because 59-year-olds and 58-year-olds who are European and have the same risk now get access, we are also removing the ickiness of having to partition the population based on their ancestry. I don't want that ickiness. I just want to treat each person as a fellow human being and deal with people based on their actual need rather than their ancestry.
There are worse health outcomes, though, for Māori and Pacifica in certain circumstances, though, isn't there?
That is true, but you've said something that you may not have realised. You've also said that your preferred lens for partitioning human beings is race. Actually, there are differences between rich and poor. There are differences based on education. There are differences based on whether people choose to smoke cigarettes. There are differences based on dietary. There are so many different ways that you can categorise people. I just reject choosing one, which is quite clumsy, quite icky, and doesn't actually get us to target the people in greatest need.